If you enjoy powerful stories of resilience, redemption, and rising above betrayal, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Every week, we share inspiring real-life journeys of people who turned setbacks into success. Whether you face challenges in your career, family, or personal life, these stories will remind you that it's never too late to take control and thrive. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Your support helps us continue bringing you content that motivates, uplifts, and empowers. Subscribe now and be part of our growing community. Your services are no longer needed, Elise declared, her voice echoing through the walnut-paneled conference room of our family-owned company. Please vacate your office by tomorrow. I looked around the table, board members shifted uneasily, a few stealing glances at each other, while my younger sister wore the smug grin I'd come to expect. She had waited years for this. "That's it?" I asked, my voice composed though my chest burned. "Yes, Diane." "That's all," Elise replied, already flipping to the next item on her agenda. I collected my notebook, gave a courteous nod to the room, and walked out, dignity intact. The soft click of the closing door masked the weight of what had just unfolded. I had just been dismissed from Montgomery Pacific Group, the logistics firm our grandfather started in Denver, Colorado. My name is Diane Montgomery, 51 years old, and until 10 minutes ago, I was the Executive Vice President of Operations. For nearly 15 years, I had been the one bringing in major clients, structuring high-revenue deals, and building the operational foundation that carried our expansion nationwide. While Elise polished our public image and played political chess with board members, I was in the trenches, brokering contracts, overseeing supply chains, and keeping our fleet running smoothly. I returned to my office, a sunlit corner suite I had earned, where my assistant, Joy, stood as I entered. "Diane? What happened?" she asked, alarmed. "Elise fired me," I said quietly. "Effective immediately." Joy stared, stunned. "She can't how? You built this company." "She can. And she just did." I sat down, allowing a single breath of disbelief before my instincts kicked in. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a leather-bound folder I'd prepared years ago. "Joy," I said, "study now. Remember when I launched Montgomery Strategic Consulting? Your LLC? The one that technically owns our client contracts." I nodded. "Exactly. Let's remind Elise who actually holds the keys to this empire." Dad had always favored Elise. She looked the part, knew how to stay agreeable. I, on the other hand, had too many ideas. Ideas that made waves. But while she collected accolades, I had built the machinery of the business. And now I was about to take it with me. While I brokered partnerships that doubled our revenue year over year, Elise stood in front of the board showcasing achievements built on my work. Our contrasts went beyond spreadsheets. She had always been the spotlight, the pageant contestant, student council favorite, effortlessly charming. I was the strategist, the one who preferred solving logistics challenges over sipping wine at charity galas. "Why don't you try to be more like Elise?" Mom used to say, gently, as if I hadn't heard it 100 times before. "She knows how to win people over." But what they never saw was that I had my own network, quiet, loyal, and rooted in results. I forged trust in boardrooms, not at banquets. My rapport wasn't built with smiles, but with consistency and follow-through. Over time, clients aligned with me not because of the company's name, but because I delivered. So 5 years ago, as talks of leadership transition began to circulate, I put a plan in motion. With legal guidance, I registered Montgomery Strategic Consulting, a limited liability company with only one client on record, Montgomery Pacific Group. It was pitched to Dad as a tool to streamline client interface and reduce overhead. He agreed instantly, satisfied with the cost savings and unaware of the long-term leverage it created. Gradually, I transitioned every major account into direct contracts with my consulting firm. The documentation was transparent, filed properly, signed legally, but overlooked by a sister who cared more about corner office decor than contract language. On paper, Montgomery Pacific became a back-end vendor, I was the face, the contact, the service. When Dad officially stepped back last month, Elise was crowned CEO. I was meant to remain quietly in the background. That was their plan. The morning after my termination, I arrived before sunrise. The halls were empty, silent, fitting. As I packed framed photos and years of awards, my cell phone buzzed. "Diane, it's Laura Kim from Western Freight. I just got an email saying Elise is my new liaison. What's happening?" "She's taken the CEO role," I replied calmly. "But the agreement you signed is with Montgomery Strategic Consulting." "Oh," she said, slowly. "So she's not actually handling our account?" "No, she's not." 3 more calls came before 9 a.m. None wanted to deal with Elise. At 9:05, her name appeared on my screen. "Where are the client contracts?" she demanded. "Exactly where they've always been," I said with a smile. "Just not where you expected." "As for Laura," I said, "she's invoking the terms she signed off on." "What are you talking about?" Elise snapped. "What terms?" I could picture her pacing in her corner office, wrapped in one of her tailored blazers, frustration turning her voice brittle. "Look at the header lines, Elise. Every major client contract routes through Montgomery Strategic Consulting. Your company only provides the back-end logistics. The clients signed with me, not with the Montgomery name." The line went quiet. "You can't just take everything." I let out a short, humorless chuckle. "I already did, 5 years ago. Dad signed off, the board approved, and it's all in writing. This is betrayal." "No," I replied evenly. "It's entrepreneurship. You fought for the title, now you get the empty desk to go with it." I ended the call just as Joy stepped through the door with a box of office supplies in her arms. "I handed in my resignation," she said, smiling. "Told HR I'm joining Montgomery Strategic. Effective immediately." I nodded slowly, the full weight of the shift sinking in. This wasn't about settling scores anymore. It was about ownership. Real, independent success. We left the building without ceremony. At home, I set up my workstation and began reaching out to our highest value partners. By nightfall, all 14 of them had confirmed their allegiance. Together, they represented over 80% of Montgomery Pacific's revenue. "Can you still deliver?" asked Thomas from Evergreen Logistics. "You've got the trust, Diane. But can you keep the supply chain moving?" A valid concern. Until that morning, I'd relied on their systems. But I had anticipated this shift. "I've already secured agreements with 3 fulfillment networks," I told him. "There won't be a gap in your operations." What I didn't say was those partnerships were sealed in real time, with calls, paperwork, and a lot of faith. By 9 p.m., my dining table was a battlefield of contracts, takeout containers, and to-do lists. I had clients, joy, and a skeleton plan. What I lacked was a team. Then my phone buzzed. Lana's unraveling, read a message from Jordan Ellis. "Half of operations wants out. Got room?" Seconds later, another buzz, this time from Elise. "Emergency board session. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Be there." I smiled. To Elise, "My legal counsel will attend." She called instantly. I let it ring. "You owe the board an explanation." "I owe them nothing," I replied, voice calm but firm. "You dismissed me, remember." "No longer needed," those were your exact words. That was before I knew about the contract structure. The same structure that's been in place for half a decade. Approved by Dad. Reviewed by the board. Fully transparent. "You misrepresented the situation, intentionally." I inhaled deeply, suppressing the sharp retort on the edge of my tongue. "No, Elise. I designed a model that ensured accountability and stability. If you chose not to understand the framework, that's a reflection of your leadership, not my actions." "He'll never forgive you for this," she said, invoking the one person who had always been her default weapon, our father. "Maybe," I said quietly. "But unlike you, I've stopped seeking his approval." The call ended. I sat there, motionless, the weight of the past day washing over me. Had I planned for this outcome? Not directly. But deep down, I'd always known Elise would find a way to push me aside. The consulting firm hadn't been a sword, it had been armor. A way to safeguard what I had built from the politics I couldn't control. My phone buzzed again. Our father's name lit up the screen. "We need to talk." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say that couldn't wait. I turned my focus to what mattered, assembling the foundation of a company already entrusted with millions in contracts. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to diminish my role, Elise had created the opportunity one hadn't dared to take on my own. Opening my laptop, I began a draft. Montgomery Strategic Consulting, end-to-end solutions, built on trust. By sunrise, momentum was building. Jordan sent over a list, 8 staffers ready to jump ship. By 7:30, my attorney, Grace Levinson, was en route to the Montgomery Pacific boardroom. And at 8 o'clock sharp, I addressed a small but capable team from a rented workspace in downtown Denver. "We're operating lean. We've got the partnerships, we've got the people, and most importantly, we have the trust our competitors just lost." Michael Perez, a logistics specialist, raised a concern about warehouse access. "They've got local exclusivity," he said. "We're not fighting that battle," I replied. "We'll pivot through facilities in Louisville and Chattanooga until we build our own footprint." Then Grace called. I answered and hit speaker. "The board meeting just adjourned," she said. It was intense. "Elise?" I asked. "She accused you of breaching fiduciary duty and demanded legal action." The room fell silent. My pulse quickened. "And the board?" "They shut her down, completely," Grace said. Turns out, 2 board members had actually reviewed the agreements at the time and knew what they were endorsing. They reminded her that your setup drove record-breaking results for years. A wave of relief passed through me. "So, no litigation?" "No. But they did authorize Elise to extend a formal offer. They want to retain Montgomery Strategic as an exclusive contractor, 5-year term, guaranteed base pay, plus incentives." I blinked. "They dismissed me, and now they want to hire my firm?" Grace gave a small nod. "In short, yes. And the offer is lucrative. 7 figures with performance bonuses. They're bleeding revenue, Diane. They need you." "Of course they do. They just lost nearly their entire portfolio in less than 48 hours. I looked around at my team, dedicated, alert, and watching closely. "Let them know I'll consider it," I said. "But we'll keep managing our clients independently until further notice." After the call, I addressed the room. "We now have leverage." Jordan leaned forward. "Are you really considering taking them on as a client?" "I'm not making any decisions that don't include this team," I said firmly. "But as a vendor instead of an employee, that might give us the runway we need to scale." Just then, the door opened. A courier stepped inside, handing me a thick envelope. Inside, a formal contract and a handwritten note from my father. "You outmaneuvered all of us. I should have named you CEO years ago." I stared at the words, caught between vindication and sadness. Recognition, yes, but only after threatening to dismantle everything he built. My phone buzzed again, this time from Elise. "This isn't finished." Of course not. Elise never conceded easily. But for once, her threats felt empty. I had the trust. I had the talent. And for the first time, I held the upper hand. The following weeks were grueling. 14-hour days. A war room of laptops, whiteboards, and coffee-stained notepads. Morning briefings. Nightly audits. We were exhausted, but aligned. 3 weeks in, I finally sat down with Grace to draft a response. "You're asking for double their offer, and 5% equity?" she asked, raising a brow. "Just enough to secure influence, not enough to make enemies." She paused. "Diane, are you sure this is strategy, not revenge?" Her question hit harder than I expected. Maybe I wasn't so sure. "I'll concede on the base," I told Grace. "Adjust it to 20% above their original figure, but leave the equity clause as is. That reflects the real value we're delivering." She reviewed the draft again, then gave a nod. "That's a more measured ask. Now, what's happening with Elise? She's gone strangely quiet. I had been wondering the same. Radio silence wasn't her usual style. We're meeting tomorrow, I said. Just the two of us. Off the record. Grace tilted her head. Want me to join? No. This one's personal. The next afternoon, I met Elise at a cafe halfway between our offices. She was already there, nursing a black coffee, her posture guarded. You look worn out, she said as I sat down. Building something real takes work, I replied. You'd know that if you'd ever built anything. She didn't bite. I've been thinking, she said slowly, about why you formed that consulting firm in the first place. Go on. You never trusted any of us. Not Dad. Not the leadership. You built your escape hatch the minute succession talks started. I considered her accusation. Trust is earned, Elise. Dad promoted your image. You took the credit. I handled the work. How was I supposed to feel secure in that system? We're sisters. And that's exactly why the business struggled. Too much personal baggage. Not enough strategy. So you created a separate entity and moved the clients under your control. Pretty convenient for a backup plan. I created a structure that ensured stability for clients and for myself. Until you decided I wasn't necessary. Finally, the veneer cracked. You know why he chose me over you? She asked, voice low. Because you're relentless. You'd torch the place just to be right. Her words landed harder than I expected. I didn't start the fire, I said. You lit the spark the day you cut me loose. I just chose not to go down with it. We sat in silence, years of rivalry and resentment between us. So what now? She finally asked. 3 months later, I was standing in the lobby of Redstone Manufacturing, our largest client to date. The new contract pushed Montgomery Strategic's revenue past $40 million, double what we handled back at the family firm. Impressive setup, said Edward Chong, their head of procurement, as he showed me around. Quite the turnaround. We had a solid foundation, I replied. We just rebuilt it without the family politics. He smiled. Denver isn't that big. People talk. I smiled back, unbothered. Every company has its origin story. We're genuinely excited to partner with you, Edward said. You've got a reputation for being directly involved, and that's exactly the leadership we've been missing in our distribution strategy. That afternoon, I returned to our permanent headquarters, a restored industrial space on the edge of downtown Denver. Exposed beams, polished concrete floors, and glass-enclosed offices gave it a gritty elegance. Each meeting room bore the name of one of our founding clients, a quiet tribute to those who believed in us from day one. What started with 8 of us now stood at 23 strong. Jordan greeted me at the entrance, visibly energized. It's official, he said. Montgomery Pacific signed off on the new terms. We're now their exclusive logistics provider for the next 3 years. A swirl of emotions rushed in, pride, validation, even a touch of grief. Did they make it public? I asked. Goes out tomorrow, Jordan replied. Elise has to announce that the company's most vital operations will now be outsourced to you. I could only imagine how that landed with her. She'll never forget this. Or forgive it. Do you care? He asked gently. I hesitated. Part of me does. But not enough to jeopardize what we're creating here. The official rollout of the partnership launched a new era for Montgomery Strategic. With stability locked in, we accelerated hiring, expanded client outreach, and secured a second operations center. 6 months after Elise pushed me out, I sat across from our father in a downtown steakhouse I hadn't visited in years. He looked older, the strain of nearly losing the company carved into his face. You're thriving, he said as I took my seat. It suits you. Thanks, I said cautiously. I owe you some things. An apology, for one, he added. I should have named you CEO when I retired. I let convention and sentiment cloud my judgment. I said nothing, allowing him space to continue. Elise had qualities, but not the ones we needed in that role. You built a lifeboat beneath our feet. And now you're running the ship. I gave a small smile. I'll take conflicted admiration as a compliment. He nodded, then added, the board is discussing leadership changes. They want you back. Not just as a vendor. As CEO. The words stunned me. Elise? I asked. She's agreed. On one condition, that you two attempt to rebuild your working relationship. And you think that's realistic? I think it's necessary. For the company. For the family. As I stepped out of our headquarters later that evening, the autumn breeze carried with it a sense of calm. 6 months earlier, I walked away humiliated. Now, I looked up at our glowing sign, Montgomery Strategic Consulting, with quiet pride. 35 employees. Major contracts. And the company that let me go is now our client. I had been cast aside. But in that act of rejection, they'd handed me something greater, a future on my own terms. Elise had tried to erase me. Instead, she handed me the blueprint to everything I was meant to build.